Hi, welcome to The Resilient Recruiter. This is your host, Mark Whitby, and I'm excited to introduce you to my special guest, Richard Hoon. Richard is the founder and CEO of iSearch Worldwide, and he's been a C-suite search practitioner for over 2 decades. Prior to that, he was the managing director. Prior to launching iSearch Worldwide, Richard was the managing director of Asia for an international executive search franchise. Richard is also the current chairman of the Center for Fathering and Dads for Life, which is a registered charity in Singapore. And on a side note, he is also a co-founder of a fintech company called Validus that is now worth over $100 million in 4 short years since it launched. So today, Richard and I discuss building an executive search firm with 10 offices in multiple countries, which he sold just a few years ago. And Richard shares a lot of his thinking and his philosophy and his strategies. In particular, we talk about why contingency recruitment is broken and why we as an industry need to move to a retained model and convert our clients to this way of thinking as well. We also discussed at length the challenges of dealing with internal recruiters and HR, and why we must aim to build relationships at the highest level within our client companies. I'm going to let you in on a secret. This conversation was originally intended as a warm-up so that Richard and I could get to know one another, and we planned to schedule the actual interview a week or so later. However, it turned into such a fascinating conversation that I realized it would be impossible to replicate. So I decided, instead of scheduling another formal interview, I would just release this conversation, its original form, to you, because it was so spontaneous and so interesting that you get to eavesdrop on what actually was just an informal chat between me and Richard. There's a bonus at the end. After the interview was over, we talked for another 10 or 15 minutes, first about Richard's passion for art collection, and then he really opened up and he actually gave me a personal mentoring session on how to be an excellent father, which was hugely valuable. So although it's not related to recruiting, I decided to leave it in because if you're a parent or you plan or wish to be a parent sometime in the future, then Richard's wisdom on this topic could prove to be extremely valuable. I hope you enjoy this spontaneous interview and look forward to hearing your feedback. Let's dive in. You've got this organization that you're involved in about fatherhood. How did you get involved in that, and what's the purpose behind that?
Well, this is a 20-year-old charity.
Okay.
It was founded by a few fathers 20 years ago. I joined the board maybe about 13, 14 years ago.
Okay.
I got involved with the organization maybe about 16 years ago.
Okay.
So they were fairly new. And then I became the chair probably about 8-9 years ago.
Okay.
So I'm the chairman. And now we have added new wings to it called Dads for Life.
Yes.
And now we have Mums for Life as well. Yeah?
Oh, cool.
So we add more mums and dads component into it. It's a charity. The goal is to eradicate fatherlessness. Every child is born has a father. But the father is not present, is not engaged, not active,
right.
Not contributing to the family. So the child grew up fatherless at home. And our job is to encourage fathers to be more active and engaged with their children, to arrest the rot, we can call it, so that if they didn't grow up in a family that had both the father and mother component, then they can do that for their own children in the future and not continue this negativity. Because the statistics for a child who grew up in a fatherless home, the chance for them to be successful in society is so remotely low.
Really? That's interesting. I wasn't aware of
Very
that.
low. If I wrote a statistic on you'd be shocked. Like 80% will leave high school,
Yes.
90% will have teenage pregnancy.
Wow.
90% will have divorce in their life.
And so what sort of initiatives does the charity, how does it do its work?
So we do events, we do programs, we do training, we do father and child bonding camp. We encourage national event like Eat with Your Family. So national, across a certain day, everybody, all the companies will close their office an hour earlier and release their staff to go back and dine with your family. It's very strategic. It's meant for you to say, you can work hard, but please spend time with the family,
Right.
And then the Father's Day is a big celebration. Like this month in June, Father's Day is coming. We're going to have a national event. The government is working with us. They give us budget that we will continue to showcase different great example of fathers who raise kids in the beautiful family they have. So we have the national event, and then below that we augment with training. So we have a bonding camp. We do a father bring a child to a camp and spend time together. Or we have fathers who just date their children, one-to-one.
I saw your article about
that. So we have different tools to equip fathers,
Wow, that's amazing. So wait a second. I wonder if we can time it, we'll release this for Father's Day, and that way, and we'll mention the charity and have a link where people can learn about it as well. Tell me, so are you targeting specifically situations where the father is completely absent, or maybe they have a father, but they're maybe they're a workaholic, they don't engage enough with their kids? Or
Very good. Good question, Mark. It's a two-pronged approach. Okay. So our goal is very long-term. So we are trying to do, number one, the preventative before it falls into society. So the advocacy part is very crucial. And because we have done 20 years, we have seen the benefit of what we have done 20 years ago with the fathers. So now we see fathers who are more engaged, more cool, to bring the kids out to carry the baby, to play with them in the park. It's very cool to be a good dad,
Right.
So, so that is the advocacy part. But we also have to do the intervention. Okay. So, for example, society, we have children whose father is incarcerated. They are in jail.
Right, of course.
So how we do event that we bring a child to the prison to see their father, and we do event to engage them with the mother. Okay, and then when the father see the child and realize their state of play, they put remark like, "If I ever get out of this prison, I vow never to get back in."
Right.
Because there's a purpose for them to live for.
Yeah.
Whereas if they go to prison, their family disown them. The mother will tell the child, "Where did your father go?" "Oh, he's dead, or he's overseas. He's not around." So the child grew up in a situation where there's no father.
Yes.
But then when they grow up, they realize the mother was telling them a lie.
Got it. That makes sense.
So we do the thing to help. This some.
Wow. That sounds cool. Richard, what about a situation, excuse me, which is more and more common these days, where there's maybe a same-sex couple, so it's two fathers or two mothers, but the child has two parents, basically. What sort of impact does that have, or how does your charity relate to that situation?
Okay, so our focus is not that particular group right now.
Okay.
We are trying to help essentially a father and mother who are married. They could be divorced, separated, but how do you get the father back into the family still?
Yeah.
Okay. We have not gone to the same-sex LGBT group where they adopt their own children. I think that will be the future with it because the need is so immense. So let's help the bulk first, and then the special interest group are smaller. We come and help them later on.
Got it. All right, that makes sense. So Richard, by the way, this is really helpful. I think we'll have a fantastic interview when we reconvene. Sure. Looking back over your career in recruitment, what are you most proud of, or what do you feel have been some of your kind of key achievements?
I think I was proud of the fact that, number one, we started from zero. I remember when we started 25 years ago. I was a corporate executive. I was with American Express and with International SOS. I was a hired gun. And then but I decided that I wanted to steer my own ship. At the age of 37, I said I want to, do my own thing. And buying a franchise was the best way. You're entrepreneur, but you're not taking all the risks. because you have a proven name and hopefully you have a proven system to do it. So coming to Doug was the right association. And it was very, very good. And we started from zero. And from zero, we grew to 10 offices in Asia, all the way from Japan, all the way to Southeast Asia.
Amazing.
That was very happy. I was very happy. And I think those were our proudest moments. Of course, we had other challenges later on when Doug sold the business to MRI. And that becomes a learning lesson. But that was my proud moment in recruiting. That is in the franchise recruiting side of things, the management side. But on the case-to-case basis, my proudest moment was seeing people who honor their word, who made mistakes and own up, how I can see character. You really see the kind of person you're dealing with, not by what they say, but what they do.
Yes.
Their action, the follow through. And so I've learned over the years that to find people who keep and honor their word over the years are rare. Doug Bugie and I, 25 years relationship, are usually, rare. And Doug is such a great guy. I mean, he makes it a point to keep in touch, even for no personal agenda, just to keep in touch, Yes. And he's really, he's a master guru in relationship building and maintaining.
Right.
So I learned from him. I'm proud of that kind of relationship. Long-term, deep relationship.
Mm. All right. That's amazing. So when you had 10 offices, how many people were in your organization?
We at that time would have probably close to 120 people.
Okay.
At least 120 to 150 people. I lost count. Some are bigger, some are smaller.
Yes.
In that about 120 to 150 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges. Do you know Greg Savage by any chance?
No, I don't.
Okay. He's based in Australia, but he travels internationally in the recruitment space. I'll send you his book. He's written a book called The Savage Truth, which is, his name is Greg Savage, so that's a good title for him. But he's run international recruitment businesses, and he's a sort of colleague and client of mine, and become a friend over the years. And I know from him, as well as other clients I've worked with, that running an international business is a real challenge because you're not physically there. So how were you able to ensure that your other offices were successful, because you can't be everywhere at once?
Yeah, that is perennial challenge of a service business, especially in a business where your assets walk in and walk out every day.
Yes.
Okay? So you need really partners that you can trust, partners that have the same long-term philosophy and will honor their word. That's why I use the word honor. And it's very rare. I think in my opinion, those who have that high watermark for honor in the recruitment business is really a minority.
Okay.
And so that is one thing I strongly believe in. The recruitment business has lost its high grounding because more people are jumping in thinking that it's easy way up.
Yeah.
They say things they don't mean. They say things they don't know. And they propagate a lot of untruth. And that is not a good thing. And I don't want a recruiter's name one day being associated with a second-hand car salesman,
Right.
Right. Or maybe a little better, like a lawyer, kind of, it would become a joke. And it would have lost it, I think, and we shouldn't. I think this is a very honorable business, because when you put people together, you got to really be responsible for their career, their future, but you're also responsible for the company. Yes. That this person is going to go in, not just for your own well-being, to say, I got a fee and that's it. But unfortunately, the training in the recruitment industry, or the lack of training rather, propagate a lot of just short-term results. I'll hit my goal. If I don't get hit, I got fired. So I just do whatever it takes to do the deal.
Right.
I don't like that.
Yes.
I've been, I think, a lone voice in the wilderness preaching, let's be honest and let's tell the truth. And if the candidate is not so good, say it as it is. If the candidate has shortcomings, say it as it is.
Yes.
And let the client decide. And nobody is perfect. There's no company that's perfect. There's no individual that are perfect. So if you always just say good things, then you're already propagating a lie. And so if there's anything I like to do is to bring honor back to the recruiting industry by making sure recruiter go back to a centered sense of morality.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah, that was my experience of starting in recruitment. Was very little training. Sort of, okay, Mark, there's a desk, there's a phone, go and make placements. And I could see that there was pressure because I could see people who are not performing and they were gone, right? So, right. And you had about 3 months to prove yourself. Correct. And to start, more than paying your costs within 3 months. Otherwise, you were history. So there was lots of people with little experience, little training, but high pressure, and to perform and to do deals. And so that's not an environment that is conducive to people behaving to the highest standard, right? And so
it also propagated by the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
And it's a combination of many factors. Recruiters who are not strong, or recruiting companies that are not strong, they propagate this concept of contingency.
Right.
So first man to the road, and they cannot be handling a dozen assignments and hope to place 2 or 1. And so there's a lot of wastage. So when you have that, you will not be thorough. You just want to take and throw, and hopefully something stick.
Exactly. That's
so
right.
That is number one issue in the recruiting industry, when the amount of contingency offering out there is so much. But I think clients has to be smarter than that to say that, look, I'm asking, I have a piece of meat, for example, and I have 5 wolves chasing for it. Right. 4 of them are going to die, right? And so the client propagate this. But of course, it comes from recruiters that are not strong, having to offer that because they have no choice. They're not strong enough to offer, I'm a professional, you ought to pay me for my service. Okay?
Yes.
So we got to be like a doctor, where the client is prepared to say, well, if you're no good, I won't use you again, but I won't ask you to heal me first before I pay you.
Right. That's a great analogy. I like that.
Yeah. So I think it's a combination of the both. And so I moved from Dutch business, which is pure contingency. I moved into a pure retainer business. So I don't start work unless the client pays me. So for you to have a retainer, you need to have a track record.
Yeah.
And I'm not an international firm like Egon Zehnder or Russell Reynolds, kind of, or Hydrogen and Struggle, where they have this network to exchange referrals. You're on your own. So you got to stand on your own credibility, your track record, and your references from your client. So, but it's a long route. It's a long route, and a lot of people cannot take it. They will not survive it. But the market propagated it. So I would like to, maybe idealistic in some form, but I like to see the industry go back to have a high sense of professionalism.
I agree 100%. Of course, I think you're right. Recruiters have propagated this situation where we agree to contingency searches, and then it is, it creates unideal context for all parties, the client, the candidate, and the recruiter, which leads to maybe a poor candidate experience. Clients who, recruiters overpromise and underdeliver. Clients are unsatisfied. But surely the client has to take joint responsibility for propagating that scenario, right? Because sometimes they won't accept this, proposal to work retained, but then they're not satisfied with the service, and yet they're not willing to change the way they engage with their search firm. So it's a chicken and egg scenario. Yes. Recruiter wants to work retained because they understand that they can deliver a better service and they can be more thorough. But it's also convincing the client.
It's very easy. I don't think it's a problem. It's just whether the recruiter knows how to pitch the business, and you have a client that is enlightened and willing to change.
Right.
It's not, if you have never done business before, and the recruiter have a track record, number one, show your track record, be open and says, these are my clients, call them and see that whether they're happy with my service.
Yes.
But since I'm doing with you for the first time, we can even do that. You got to be exclusive. You got to be over a period of time. You don't cut the table's leg when I'm doing your work for you, or the chair's leg, when I'm doing work for you. So commit to that. And I will work dedicated for you. This assignment is only dedicated to me. And let me finish it successfully. If you're happy with my service, the next one, you retain me. You get rewarded for that. But the recruiter must be confident enough to say, all right, for the first case, I'm prepared to do it your way. But I'm not going to be going to a dogfight with everybody, because then there is no way. It's bad for you, because the industry, the candidate is going to be confused. So many people are calling them. Who has the mandate of the client? Who, in fact, not only have the mandate, who is telling the truth? They don't know the information. So I think it can be done, but it needs a strong recruiter who can pitch that. And then it needs an enlightened client who says, yes, I'm prepared to do that, because I'm looking for the best. And you're not proven yourself to be the best, but if you are, I'm prepared to go with you.
Yes. I'm playing devil's advocate here, Richard, because I believe 100% what you're saying. And in fact, for the last 20 years, one of the things I've been training recruiters on is how to win retained searches and transition away from contingency. So it's something I'm very, very evangelical about and passionate about. The objections I hear from recruiters, when I suggest this is, well, that's all very well for senior appointments, but I'm in the mid-level, and often I'm working with a talent acquisition or an HR person, and they don't like this idea because they're very wedded to their process. They've got a preferred suppliers list of vendors, and they send each job out to all of their list of suppliers, and they're not the one with the problem or the one experiencing the pain, and who can be enlightened, let's say. So, a recruiter in this scenario now, and if they go to the senior leadership of that company, then they get blacklisted and cut off as a supplier. So then often the temptation. Now, for me, I would work hard to educate and help to enlighten that HR professional as to how it is in their best interest to, number one, give me access to the senior leaders to better understand, everything to do with that search. But number two, if they would not agree, then I'm out. I'm not going to take the client on board. But that's maybe easy for me to say, but some recruiters, they're really hungry for that business, and they feel like, well, it's better away from that scenario, then I've got nothing. What would you say to someone who's in that, that sort of mindset?
Very valid question. So you're right. Retainer are not possible across. So I'll do the comment in two parts. The first part is the fact that it is for the senior role. However, that is even been encroached today. Okay, this contingency disease is going up to the senior role too, and you have companies like the big firm that I'm telling you about are prepared to do contingency too. Which is scary because it's just a sign of desperation.
Right.
Okay. Now, so that part should be protected, area. Now, for the middle market, it's a different ballgame altogether. When the company began to structure having resourcing directors or resourcing managers who are ex-recruiter, bringing them in. Now, it goes on this mindset that, hey, if I'm paying so much millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars in recruiting fee, let me hire somebody in, and I don't have to pay that fee, right? And so they put a gatekeeper in to do so. But they're so wrong, because this person, it becomes really a gatekeeper, and it doesn't add value, because a resourcing manager cannot be doing 10 projects, 20 projects with all internal clients. So they land up outsourcing. to recruiter.
Right.
And they become the gate, and they add a layer of complication.
Right.
To the hiring authority, because words get transmitted and lost. And the worst thing is some of this former recruiting executive had gone in, they've been on one side selling, now they're trying to buy, and they make life a bit difficult. And they forgot they were there before. Instead of educating, they become really very tough. And because they have so much work to do, they don't relay the information correctly. Now, if you don't know and you say, I don't know, it's okay. But if they don't know and they tell you things that are not true, and you get led wrong way. And then the manager is waiting and says, why are you giving me all bad guys? And that's because the resourcing manager is telling them all the wrong things. But they don't know that this gatekeeper is the problem. So I think the resourcing concept, where things that the company thinks from a monetary perspective is helping them, actually is not. Okay, I think we should bring back recruiting to the line manager, just like HR. Human resource management is a line manager's function, not a HR function. Hiring your staff, retaining your staff, motivating your staff are all a line manager's function. HR just facilitate. Okay, if companies realize that, hey, if you lose people, it's your fault. If you don't get people, it's your fault. Then I think the hiring manager will now take on their personal responsibility. They say, look, I want to work with a recruiter because, you don't have to tell me all this standard terms, because, it's like, I have cancer. And you say, all right, you can only use these 3 doctors. And, my cancer is a different type and I need a specialist. And you're restricting me. I'm going to die because, this 3 doesn't have the competency. Same thing in recruitment. They give this one size fit all. So it becomes actually a pandemic now. It's getting more and more and more with this kind of cost-centric approach to recruiting. They measure them by KPI. Yes. However, a staff being recruited, you never measure by the amount of fee you pay. You measure by the amount of contribution the person can make after you pay the fee, and the salary. But, who's going to tell employees? You got to tell them. And an enlightened employer will know. So to be recruiting, you got to reach the top, because top management understand, and then they got to push it down. But if you expect to push from bottom up through the resourcing manager, it is impossible, because everybody has their own turf to protect, and yours is the last one they'll protect.
You're so right. That's explained really, really well, Richard. And as an example, I've got a client in the States. He specializes in treasury recruitment, quite specialized. Only large companies need a treasury function. So he's dealing with large corporations. And in many of these companies, the HR or talent acquisition department is very, very powerful and territorial. And they often will, the managers, the hiring managers will be intimidated by, maybe the global head of resourcing is more senior in the organization than the hiring manager. So he was telling me one case where based on the candidates that were being introduced via the resourcing function, he'd done more than 25 interviews and not hired anybody because they were the wrong people. How much wasted time on so many people involved in identifying and then bringing 25 candidates in for interview and no result yet. And yet he was not allowed to give the mandate to my client to instruct them to go and do the search, even though that was a specialist in this area. He was not allowed. And so I think for your approach to work, it really does have to be at the top. And then the person who has who's the policy maker who can decide, actually, for this type of search, we will use a specialist and so on.
If there's anything radical, I would suggest, if you want to have a resourcing head cannot report to HR. Can you believe me? It has to report to the CEO, because one of the mandate of a CEO is finding talent.
Right.
Companies need a few things, 3 things to work. You need a great idea. which means a great product. Then you need financing to market and to develop that idea, the product. And these two are abundance. Great ideas, everybody can think of one. Everybody can design a better product. More. And money is abounds. There are money chasing ideas all the time. The missing link is the third one, is people that can execute the idea with the money. But companies don't realize it. So the CEO spend a lot of time getting people to develop ideas, getting people to fund it. So they spend a lot of time with the CFO funding it, but they don't spend enough time finding the talent. They leave it to HR, and they shouldn't.
Absolutely. So, wow, great insight there, Richard. So you've been successful kind of building an international multi-office search firm. And what are you doing these days? Are you still active or?
Well, I'm 63 right now, and so it's for me to smell the roses, enjoy myself, and do something of significance and of eternal impact. And so I still do some recruiting. I don't manage 10 offices. I sold them all with it because size does not have its benefit all the time. Okay, the bigger you are, the more challenge you have. And if you don't have the right systems and philosophy put in place across, then you're going to have a lot of unhappiness and everybody running 10 different directions. Especially when you manage people like a recruiter who is successful. If they're successful, their ego is big. And therefore, they want to do it their way. And, just because you're a recruiter doesn't mean you can manage a business, but they don't understand. It's like a doctor who thinks that I'm a great doctor, I can be administrator of a hospital, It's a different thing, all right? So I think given where the business is, I thought that it cannot be long-term. I should cash out and sell it. So I've been selling it. And I sold it all before I turned 60, and then begin to develop I was already doing my practice in retain. And so I'm just doing it now because my client asked me to. They know that I can do it, I can deliver. They will call me and say, Richard, we need your help. And this mandate will either come from the chairman or the CEO of a company. I don't deal with the lower, the other levels beyond the direct higher authority. So for me, I define a hiring authority as one who has the 3 M's, I think, if I remember correctly. I call it MAN, okay? If you want to have like, they must have the money. That means they must have the ability to approve your budget. They must have the authority to say yes. And they must have a need. Okay? So the middle manager always have a need. But they don't have the authority to say yes. The authority to say yes means if I need to pay higher than the normal, I will pay. Okay? And then the money means I have the means to pay for your fees and everything else. Most middle manager will have the first two, but doesn't have the money. When I reach to the person, sometimes the HR have the money. They have authorization to approve. Okay? The need is at the line manager. And the authority to hire has to come from either HR or from that. For a big company, that's possible too. Okay? But ideally, it is with a CEO that has the money, the authority, and the need. Then I deal with them. So most of my clients today are in that category. If not, then I can't, because you will have problems down the line. I've seen it now. And the industry is at this stage now. I think in my lifetime it's not going to change. So why fight a trend that is going to go negative? Let it reset, like the COVID-19. Let the world be reset and you come back later on and do it a different way.
Makes total sense.
But so I spend my time, that's why I'm doing the charity and doing other social concern and work. But, I was about to put a note to you when you asked that, what are some of the things I do. At the ripe old age of 60, I co-founded a fintech company.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So for 20 years, for almost 20 years, I was only in one business and one business alone, and that was in the high-touch business, which is a people business. And I stay focused. I didn't try to do other things. I had a lot of ideas, but I said, no, stay focused and build the business. That's why I built the 10 offices and sold it off. And then, when I was in my late 50s, after 20 years, the idea came, and it was from a high touch to a high tech. So we co-founded a fintech company that's doing quite well. It's an online platform, peer-to-business lending. And that company, that I can share with, because, we started from zero with a few of my partner, and today it's worth over $100 million as a market cap company over 4 years.
Wow, 4 years. That's phenomenal.
That is more than my recruiting business when I did it for 20 years.
Wow. And so what's the business called?
It's called Validus, Validus, Validus Capital.
And it's a pure lending platform.
It's a peer-to-business lending. So
peer-to-business, okay.
So we have people who put money and become bankers.
Yeah.
And then we onboard companies, and then if they find the right deal they're happy with, then they'll just lend them. And then the platform take a cut from their interest revenue that we do. We only do accounts, zero financing, invoice discounting, very targeted kind of a document that helps SMEs. And we are in 3 countries right now: Singapore, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And then we are going to Thailand, part of the ASEAN tour we're going to go. I was co-founder, but when we had our Series A investor, I stepped away from it because they need the executive team, and we hired a team in to run it. So, and then became, I was the chairman of the board first, and then became chairman of the advisory board, and now they are too big. They can't have it. So I've just stepped away from that. I was doing it formally. So now I'm just a shareholder and seeing the baby grown and be a young adult, hopefully.
That's fantastic. I love that story. Richard, one more question I wanted to circle back to is you talked about the challenges of having a larger business. And this is a decision that all entrepreneurs need to make. Is this a lifestyle business where I have, less hassle, less complexity? I can just have a high income and work on my own and enjoy what I'm doing. But then I'm still on a hamster wheel, right? I have to keep working in order to keep earning, and there's no exit point. I have to keep doing that. Versus, being maybe more ambitious and trying to build something that it takes on a life beyond the founder, which in the long term maybe has a bigger potential payoff, but means a lot more challenges along the way. How would you advise someone to make that decision?
Okay. Now, I think the recruiting business general structure today, except for the big global search firm, is not effective, where they operate on an employee relationship. So I open an office, I hire a director for the operation, and then he hires people. They have a commission structure, and they have a layer upon it. It doesn't work because people, after a while, feel that, hey, I can do it on my own. What do I need the structure of the company? Especially if they are good, because they don't understand that you need an organization behind you to support you. But nonetheless, it is relatively easy because the barrier to entry is low.
Right.
With it, you can link an account, you have a computer, you have a database, and you're good with people, you can start it off, literally, from scratch. Now, the challenge is this: how do we grow as a business? I think we got to almost take the accounting firm approach, okay, where you go in and you work your level, and then you became a junior partner or a global law firm, a senior partner, and after a time, you have to step off, and then the next guy take over from you. Okay, you be a partner, you buy into the partnership, and then you exit with a nice exit point. That's all you can do. You can't build 10 offices in Asia and try to sell it. Gone are the days you can do that anymore. Because before you can sell it, everybody's going to jump ship.
So you're proposing a structure more like an accountancy practice.
Accountancy or global legal firm, where they have a partnership arrangement. The partnership share in the contribution of the whole firm. And then you have people who specialize in different area. Just an accountant have different area of practice. law firms also have different area of practice, and therefore recruiting also should have different practices, especially in the middle market. They must specialize. They cannot be a generalist in the middle market.
Interesting. I wonder why more recruitment businesses aren't structured that way. In the UK, it's called a limited liability partnership, LLP, and it's a different corporate structure. But I don't see that. That's interesting. I wonder why.
Because owners don't want to give up their equity.
Okay. Right.
So you have to make your mind, right? Do I do £1 million and it's mine, or I do £100 million and I probably own 10% of it?
Right. Okay,
right.
That's interesting.
It's a quantum game. It's not a percentage game. You don't understand that?
Can you repeat that? It's a what game?
It's a quantum game.
Quantum game. What do you mean by that?
In other words, it's amount. It's 10% of 100 million better than 100% of 1 million.
Of course.
Yeah. So it's the amount, not percentage.
Right.
So you can dilute your percentage, but owners always feel that if I'm less than 51%, I'm not owning the company. Mm-hmm. But technically, when you have recruiting business, you don't own the company. They feel that they own the company.
Interesting. So coming back to the original question then of deciding, do I want to be a high earning solo, practitioner, or do I want to build some kind of, whether it's a partnership or whether it's a more traditional structure, and go down that route? What advice would you give to someone who's kind of grappling with that decision?
You're talking about an owner or a recruiter?
The owner, well, the founder. So they could just do what you're doing now, pick and choose the assignments, do the ones they're excited about and make good money, or they could try and really build something.
Sure. I think if an owner is successful and have done it for many years, it's very hard for them to give up. Right. So they almost have to realize that it's going to be a time when the moment their hands is off the till, the income is going to drop and the business is gone. The business will die with them because they are the face, they are the competency behind it. They are the soul of the organization. So don't try to outlive it, okay? With that. I think if they are, then they would be distracted. They'll be trying to find money to come in to buy them, and then try to keep the business alive, try to burn both ends. They will fail. Because it's a business that is very transactional. There's a short tail in the revenue. Yes. Your assignment, a recruiting company in contingency cannot see beyond 90 days.
Right.
So how are you going to build a business? Whoever takes over from you, can see 90 days of pipeline. Beyond that, they have to develop. If you are gone, how are they going to develop? So it's not some business you can hand over and sell. It's like a medical doctor who is a cardiologist. He's going to die with him. He's gone,
Fair enough. That makes sense. I think, I have a number of clients who have done it successfully, and they've built an organization, but they decided right from the beginning that's what they were going to do, and they came off they took their they came off desk as soon as possible and started building a team. They were not the face of the company. It's a different set of skills and a different mindset. So they knew from the beginning, we're not going to be the ones who are client facing. We're not going to be the primary, fee generators. Our job is to build a culture, hire amazing people, train them to be successful, and retain them as long as possible. Put staff retention hooks in place so that people want to stay and want to work for us. And that's so one group of entrepreneurs I worked with. There's 3 guys, really smart, really hardworking guys. They've built a company up to about 150, 180 staff in 3 or 4 countries, I think. But they didn't build themselves for years and then try and grow a team. They knew right away that was their vision. So they didn't want to be Go ahead.
Yeah, you can build that. So I consider this a medium size. You're not going to be a global player.
Sure.
You have a few cities, a few countries. That's all you can do,
Yeah.
And just like me, I built 10 offices. It's a stretch for me already just to manage it.
Right.
And the return after a while is not worth the hassle of having big revenue. I always say, sales is vanity, profit is reality, cash flow is absolute necessity.
Right.
Right. So in the cash business, after a while, as you expand, you're investing more and more, and not all your recruiting people are going to be producing. So you're putting good money into bad investment, so-called.
Yes.
So it's a cycle. It's a trial and error. Hopefully you hit a gold dust person, but then you got to keep that gold dust person going on, right? So it's a vicious cycle. But you can build a medium-sized business and then sell it. Yes, you can. So you have two ways. Either you stay niche, very targeted. That means you go long, but you're not going to go wide. Or you go wide but medium. You will not be global. When you asked me, my thinking was more global. Like Ernst & Young global. Like a Hydrix who can go global. You almost have to have a partnership model where the partners come in and get out. But nobody can say, I built a global company, a recruiting company, I sold it. The closest I ever find in a Europe situation was, I think James Caan was the one who did quite well.
Yeah.
He was smart. He built a certain size. He was able to piggyback the global story and sold it to a private equity fund. At that time, the private equity fund was quite keen in this area. Okay. Now they are less keen because they see the perils that is depending on the person.
You're right. You said it earlier. Your biggest asset is, the walking in and out of the office every day. And so if you're acquiring a business, there's no intellectual property, there's no patents, there's no, product. It's really the relationships that are owned by those individuals that make up the team. That's very hard to,
to replicate. Or you do the Doug UG model, which is a franchising model.
Yeah,
he's own them, and he has a system, and he bring on board people who are not in business but want to be in the business, pay him, and therefore you have a network of names. And after a while, if you have 50 offices around the world, somebody will see that, okay, I see a long tail in a royalty payment, and then I can buy the business. So that was successful in selling. James Caan was successful in selling a recruiting business. That was successful in selling a franchising recruiting business. Right. But two different businesses. But I have not seen a global company. I've seen regional been sold, but never global.
Okay.
It's like, can you find Michael Page being sold globally?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Richard, I know you're very interested in art collecting. How did that come about?
You can see my art behind.
Yes.
It started when I got married at a ripe young age of 23. And I bought my first artwork for my in my home. We were married and we have a matrimonial home at 25. So I bought the first art piece. It's my Michael Heitzer, an American-German descent artist. And in fact, I can only afford to buy a print. I can't even buy the original. I just bought a print. And it's called A Collection of American Masters. And I like it because I'm an engineer by training, but I have a very creative engineering streak. I'm an atypical engineer. That's why I did stay in engineering with it. So I bought it and I love it. It's still with me today. I still kept it. Along the year, I developed a passion for art. I believe in this, okay? So a room filled with art is a room filled with thoughts, okay? And art stimulates creativity, just like reading. There are only two things in my mind that stimulate creativity, and that is reading a book and looking at art. Why? Because when you read a book, you got to translate the word to imagination. Okay, mm-hmm. And then you will entertain. If you read the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings, it is never the same as watching the movie. In fact, those who read it, find it's a lot better than the movie. The movie was very entertaining. Okay, Andrew Jackson, I think, was the director. He did a lot of interpretation of it, and it was good. But the writer, Tolkien, she was brilliant in writing the book. Okay, R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the book, and you got to see the level of imagination this author has and the language that he created. So when you read, we are creative. Right now, we don't do a lot. Everything is processed from us through internet. You Google everything, and they're there. And people click a video to learn, then to read. They don't read anymore. So number one, art is the same. Art is very static. Look at the art behind me; it's static. But this piece has been me for maybe 15 years now with it, and it's by Ernesto. See, look at that.
Yeah.
And this, I have others here, I have others there, you can see that. And so this, my house, and you can see to the back, you can see other art sculpture as well. So when you look at a piece of art, it's the same piece of work for 15 years. But every time I look at it, it affects me differently. It stimulates me differently. Because it depends on my mood. It depends on what I'm observing, what I'm seeing on that day. And so when I look at my house, it's like a walking entertainment center. I can continue to be stimulated by the art. So I love art. Number one, not only is colorful for the house and soften the whole house, but for me, it's just continue to stimulate me creatively and also give me peace and calm when I see it. That's why I love it. And I see the creative work of an artist, how they can translate pigments and paint on a canvas of paper, which is worth a few dollars, into millions of dollars. How did they do that? That is great creative creating of value, right?
That's absolutely true. Do you think, how important is creativity in recruiting? Because I don't see a lot of imagination or creativity in this industry. To what extent is an advantage to really think creatively?
Oh, it's so advantageous. You are. Number one, the challenges posed in the recruiting industry is never static. Mm-hmm. Because you're having two things that move all the time. A client, a hiring manager that moves, a candidate that moves, a company that moves, and a situation that moves. There's nothing static. It's not like buying an iPhone that that I have this features, it should be there. No. So the only thing that's constant in the recruiting industry is change. And because it's constantly changing, you have to be very resourceful to constantly evolve your solution. I can't give you a 10-point and say, do this. You got to use the 10-point and apply it in different situations. So in training in recruiters, I will tell them, these are my toolbox. Okay, you learn the toolbox, learn it well, but don't think every solution you got to apply the toolbox. You got to be smart to say, which toolbox do I use? And how do I put it together to solve it? So you got to be creative.
Love it.
And be honorable. Because if you're creative and not honorable, then you tell all kinds of lies.
Fantastic. Richard, thank you so much for your time today. That's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed meeting you.
Take care.
Take care. Thanks a lot.
Bye.